What's the aftermath going to be in game 4 after all of this talk about free throws and fouls and officials and all of that mess? Plus, Jayson Tatum's search for a bounce back game. How do the Celtics use Robert Williams the right way? And one stat that's going to blow your mind about the Celtics turnovers and transition with guest Andrew Lopez of ESPN right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Boston, baby, we do what you can't. Locked on number 18, Tatum and Brown, J-team, step back. We gon' wet that and slay teams. Of course, the Celtics, who else could it be? Screaming like KG with the Larry O.B. Karalis above average, assessing the team status. Best daily pod, no cap, salary matching. Clutch like Bird the DJ, keep John on replay. Prime time, dapping up the truth on the sideline. Raining J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. B.
Hey there, thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day and part of your daily routine. This is a Monday through Friday podcast, bonus podcast this week because they had the Saturday night game. So whenever there's a game, I'll drop a podcast and give you something a little bit extra. I really do appreciate you subscribing. It's free wherever podcast exists. It's on YouTube. You can subscribe to the show on YouTube. I'm John Karalis. I cover the Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. I've written a book called The Boston Celtics All-Time All-Stars, which you can buy on johnkaralis.com. $30, signed, personalized copy. I was also one of the media voters for the Celtics 75th anniversary team. I'm here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, getting ready for game 4. Celtics need this win. They're down 2-1, and I feel good about this win. But today, to discuss where the Celtics are, bring in my friend and special guest, Andrew Lopez of ESPN. How's it going, Andrew?
It's going, man. It is a lovely weekend in Milwaukee. I am I'm still not used. We talked about this the other day. I'm not used to this weather in May. It is 58 degrees outside. That's February weather for me, bro. I don't know what my body does not know how to react right now.
Yeah, you got that Southern blood now, man. For those who don't know, Andrew is regularly on the New Orleans Pelicans beat. And now I'll say promoted to the Celtics beat. How are you enjoying the Celtics beat now?
Man, it's fun. I'm just to be quite honest, I'm just happy to be doing anything at this point in the season, especially after the Pels run, which was fun. I mean, a great 6-game series against the Suns, but just the chance to do anything else, I'll jump at that opportunity. And when they were like, "Hey, we need you to take care of the Celtics during this series," I was like, "Perfect, let's go." And I mean, of the series, I thought it was going to be the one that had the best chance of going 7. As we just saw a few minutes ago, maybe there's another one that looks like it could do that. But it's been a fun series so far.
Yeah. Philly, Miami is now all evened up. So we'll see how that goes. I still think that whoever comes out of this series, Celtics-Bucks, is going to wipe the floor with whoever comes out of that series. But we'll save that discussion for another time. Hopefully we're still continuing to talk about the Celtics when that's the case. By the way, today's show is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. So, Andrew, after game 3, let me just get your general assessment. Now, you, the unbiased person here, because there's a lot of, it was funny because Giannis after the game was like, "Oh, I'm not going to complain about the refs and get fined." And people in Boston were like, "What are you complaining about?" And then we did a segment on last night's podcast about some of the calls that we thought should have gone Boston's way. And Bucks fans are like, "What are you complaining about?" So I'm not asking you to comment necessarily on the officiating, but just where we are, your kind of like fresh perspective opinion on how this series looks after 3 games, who might have the edge.
I think it's whoever decides that they're going to be the more physical team going into that night. I think that's kind of been the case so far in all 3 games. We start back in game 1, Milwaukee was the aggressor. Ime and Jaylen both kind of said it to themselves. Hey, I mean, we shouldn't have been caught off guard, but we were caught off guard.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think surprised was the word that Ime used after game 1. We shouldn't have been surprised. And then the Celtics answered in game 2. And I think both teams decided we're going to just try and out-physical each other in game 3. And we saw kind of how that went. The number that still sticks out to me throughout that game is in the final 16 minutes and 30 seconds, the Celtics shot 17 free throws and the Bucks shot 0, which was odd because I felt like the Bucks were still trying to be aggressive. I'm not saying they were leaning one way or the other at that point. Clearly, I think Boston should have at least gotten 18 free throws in the last 16-30. As many of your listeners do, I assume. But I think the biggest key is Boston may be the team that can grind this out for longer. I think that's what we're seeing with Milwaukee. I mean, when Giannis handed the ball to Drew for the last shot, that last possession, the one to put them up 3, where he gets the spin, or he gets over Jayson, he gets the floater. I mean, I'm sitting in my seat going, why is he giving the ball up? Like he just, but I think he is kind of just that gassed at that point. And, I know they're the defending champs. They're defending champs for a reason, but the physicality is going to start to take its toll. And I think it may lean Boston's way if that's how the rest of these games play out.
It's funny that you bring this up because I'm going to go back. I was just rewatching the game. I'm going to go back a few plays prior. The Celtics actually missed 2 3-pointers in that 50-second to 45-second span. Prior to the first 3-pointer, Jayson Tatum completely whiffs on a potential drive past Pat Connaughton. Now he's on the right-hand side, and in the right corner is Grant Williams, and Giannis is there. That play goes from 24 seconds on the shot clock. They get it over the with 19 or so to go. The 3-pointer goes up with like 3 seconds left on the shot clock. Giannis doesn't take his hands off his knees the entire possession, except to casually wave with his right hand at Tatum going by. And the frustrating part, which is going to be part of something that I write about for tomorrow, is that Tatum, it's one of those plays that Tatum kind of blew and had an opportunity with a gassed Giannis Antetokounmpo standing there and clearly not going to offer any help. And that could have been a pivotal, that would have put, if he had driven and, laid it in, 3-point game, or, if Jaylen hits his shot, it's a 4-point game. But to your point, Giannis was gassed. He was done by the end of that. And I'm sure the Bucks fans who have flocked to this podcast, they are all over the YouTube comments. They're going to love to hear me say that the Celtics in that final stretch were really just pounding the hell out of Giannis, and he wasn't getting some of the calls. He got a ton of the calls early, and I think there's some of the balance here. What do you think? If you give Giannis like a bunch of free throws early, at some point they're going to be like, we can't give him 25 free throws. Like at some point, if everyone else is going to have to play through contact, Giannis going to have to play through some contact too. I just don't think that he can live at the line quite the way that everybody in Milwaukee wants him to live at the line. It
reminds me of Khalil. I think we've made it 8 minutes into this podcast before an actual Zion Williamson reference. But it reminds me of when Zion broke his finger late in the year. And David Griffin gave that press conference where he, says there's more violence in the lane than in any other time. And he, there's no player who's been beat up like him since Shaq. When we talked to Stan Van Gundy about that, when he was the coach of the Pelicans, obviously last season, when we talked to Stan Van Gundy, Stan kind of mentioned, they when he would complain to referees about Zion's foul count, and they were like, well, he's already 5th in the league. He's already shooting 8 or 9 a game. What more do you want? And he's like, I want you to call the foul.
Right.
If there's a foul, you call it. And if a guy is going to the line 20 times a game, is that great basketball? Does that Is that pleasurable for the viewer? No, probably not. But if he's getting fouled that much, call it. And I think with Giannis, he realizes if he's going to get that call in the first and second quarter, he's going to expect to get that call in the third and fourth quarter. And I don't necessarily know if he got that the other day, as we saw by the gap in 16, right. The 16-minute stretch there. But what I don't like from officials, and I think anybody who has ever been around the game of basketball, you call it how you're going to call it in the first quarter, how you're going to call it in the fourth quarter. And I think a lot of people would like to see it that way. I know playoff basketball is playoff basketball, but if you're going to let some things go in the first, you're going to let it go in the fourth. So if you're going to call it tight, just call it tight from the beginning, and then everybody can adjust. I think Ime kind of even referenced that before his I got to teach him how to flop comment, but it was the one where he's like, hey, look, I mean, we got to see how the game is being played. And when we see how it's being played, we have to adjust. And I think both teams kind of have to do that going into game 4.
Yeah, no, it's 100%. And I don't want to make it about the officiating, but look, free throws are like the way these teams defend. Free throws are going to decide these games.
Oh, in absolutely. I mean, you have these two physical teams. I mean, it's yes. You could have a game where there are 60 free throws, and I wouldn't bat an eye because of how these teams play.
Right, which really makes it interesting because this kind of almost is like a little Phil Jackson-y from the Celtics, like complain afterwards about the refs and try to get their attention of like, hey, how about looking at Bobby Portis for like that elbow to Robert Williams' head, which to me, my biggest complaint, and I said this on last night's podcast, that's my biggest complaint in this game. That Portis elbowed somebody in the face inadvertently, but still an elbow to the face in the NBA is like criminal charges, the way they call flagrant fouls now. So for that to not only go uncalled, but I thought that they would retroactively call something and give him like a flagrant. I guess I was wrong on that one.
Well, usually those do come, I think, 2 days after. So I think if that were to come,
all right, that's a good point.
Trust me, I learned about retroactive flagrant ones a lot in the Phoenix, the Phoenix New Orleans series. So
that is
we had more than our fair share in that one.
Back with more from Andrew in just a minute. First, let's talk about BetOnline, which has the Milwaukee Bucks favored by 1 right now heading into Game 4. Head on over to BetOnline to check that out. All your latest sports betting stats, information. You can bet on the NBA playoffs, obviously Major League Baseball. Somebody made a ton of money on the Kentucky Derby. If you had gone there and bet on the right horse, you would have made a killing too. BetOnline has all of that information, live in-game betting. You can bet on esports. You can bet on everything. Head on over to the website today. Use your mobile device, however you want to do it, to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline is where the game starts. Please gamble responsibly. Thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. How about making Locked On NBA Big Board your second listen every day? It's time for the draft pretty soon. So if you want to get caught up on all the latest, I know the Celtics don't have a first round pick there, but if you're interested in the draft, check out Rafael Barlow, who is amazing at draft coverage. This dude is traveling around the world scouting players. He knows what he's talking about. So check out Locked On NBA Big Board with Rafael Barlow, who authors the NBA Big Board newsletter. Check it out wherever you get your podcasts. Now let's continue the conversation here with Andrew Lopez of ESPN. So, all right. So enough of the foul stuff and all that stuff. I think if we're going to go into the wins and the losses here, fouls and free throws and all of that. The 2 losses that Boston had, turnovers, led to Milwaukee points. I think in a half-court versus half-court battle, Boston wins. In a transition versus transition battle, Milwaukee wins. And this series is going to come down to Boston turnovers. And Jayson Tatum threw a pass off of Drew Holiday's face in this game. Like, come on. And it was just a simple chest pass. Like, what are you doing? Where's your head, man? If the Celtics can take care of the ball, then they'll win game 4. And if they can continue to take care of the ball and make it a half-court series, then I think Boston will come away with this. But if they turn it over and they let Giannis go crazy, then he's going to do that little wiggle dance that he did on the baseline.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that was a really big shimmy.
That was
like a full body shimmy. It was
more convulsion than anything. I think. I've never seen him do that before. I never want to see him do that again. That was.
I don't know if he ever has. I really think he was feeling the moment right there.
He really was. That was kind of funny. The best part is all of the still photos afterwards on Getty Images when I'm searching for game photos for my story. When you catch a shimmy like that in mid, some of the faces are fantastic. But anyway, so I mean, when you look at Boston's turnovers, do you see them as more like self-inflicted or Milwaukee just ramping it up and saying, no, we're going to take this ball from you?
One of my favorite things in the NBA to watch is to watch Drew Holiday play defense.
Yeah.
When Drew Holiday wants to turn it on, he is a problem. You and I had this conversation before the game the other day about how we really don't have jobs. We get paid to watch basketball. Like, we are paid to watch the game of basketball. And at times we are watching the best of the best of the best at what they do. When it comes down to it, we can throw out, the 2021-22 Defensive Player of the Year. We can throw out the runner-up this year. Drew Holiday is still a top 3 perimeter defender to me in the league, hands down.
Sure.
And when he wants to be, I think he is the top one. I think at this point in his career, he picks and chooses a little bit more when he wants to completely do it. To say this, I think it is a combination of, in all sorts of situations. I think, especially in game 3, when Tatum wasn't going, I think they started to force things in the third quarter and make easy mistakes. And the Bucks just capitalized on them. To your point about the transition offense, in the third quarter, the Bucks had 20 transition points. Boston had 17 points total.
Yeah.
That's how good they were in that quarter. By the way, Boston had 0 transition points in the third quarter. For the game, and this is according to ESPN's tracking data. This is from ESPN Stats and Information. In transition, the Bucks averaged 1.53 points per play in game 3.
That's pretty good.
In the half court, they averaged 0.75.
Oh, Jesus. There you go.
I'm going to say those numbers one more time.
Please.
In transition, 1.53. In the half court, 0.75, which means they were twice as good at scoring per play in transition than they were in the half court. You compare that to where they are in the previous 2 games. I think it was like 1.14 and 0.83. So it was a vastly different thing. And I think that is what the Bucks are going to try to do. But as far as the mistakes that I think Boston is making, I do think it is a little bit of that. I think, they didn't have Brook Lopez for a bunch of the year. He allows them to do a lot of different things on defense. Ime even said it wasn't anything that they did differently. We saw Brook and Giannis in drop. We saw Bobby Hedges. We didn't see anything different. They just, I think, turned up the electricity a little bit. They were fired up. And when things started going bad, there wasn't anybody to just say, hey, look, let's stop it now. And it took until the fourth quarter, I think, for Boston to kind of get things back on the right track.
When I go back to that play, that Pat Connaughton play where Giannis was gassed, but Jayson Tatum was just in his own head.
Yeah.
I think you got to credit the Milwaukee defense for putting him in that place, because when you're like, when I watch that play and some of the subsequent plays, he is very much mechanical. when he talks about overthinking, I think the way it worked was he's like, okay, here's the play. I need to do this. I'm expecting 2 to come at me, and I need to get the ball to Marcus Smart here, and then we're going to flow from there. Because Marcus Smart, and they were getting it to him in the high post and hoping that he could collapse the defense from there. Okay, fine. Except that he did do those steps, except he had Pat Connaughton completely turned around in a lane to the basket that he didn't even read. And like, you're Jayson Tatum. Yeah. When has Jayson Tatum ever passed up a chance to drive and maybe even dunk on people? So the Bucks defense, I think, has at least in that game gotten him to a point where he just expects the bodies. He expects this. To be open at that point is foreign to him, and it's been drilled into his head. 0.5 basketball. Get off the ball. You know, when you're drawing 2, get off the ball so your teammates can have a great chance to score. And like, if he's just seeing ghosts out there, this is kind of like the way I described what Boston did to Kevin Durant in the last series. It's almost like he's seeing ghosts out there. Some of the plays that Tatum made in game 3 were very much like the plays that Durant was making in their game 3 and 4, where he was just turning the ball over. You're like, you're passing it to a spot where no one is.
Who is this?
Right. What are you doing? Bucks defense are doing to Tatum what the Celtics defense did to Durant. And, you know, both were very impressive. And it's now up to Tatum to like understand you did it. You see it from both sides now. Yeah. Now understand that you got to get back to reading it. Because if Tatum can read some of those plays, give Boston 2-3 minutes of vintage Tatum down the stretch, they steal this game. We're going to wrap up the conversation with Andrew, get into the Robert Williams stuff next. How do the Celtics use Robert Williams correctly? I think that's going to be a huge key here. But first, let's talk about Built Bar. You know how you use Built Bar correctly? Unwrap it and eat it because it's awesome. It's a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. It's covered in 100% chocolate. It comes in a bunch of delicious flavors. Whatever type of flavor candy bar you would eat, you can get something similar in a Built Bar. And the best part is, instead of 240 to almost 300 calories in a chocolate bar, you're going to get about 130 calories or so in a Built Bar, plus only 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and about 17 grams of protein, depending on which one you get. If you want to replace your candy bar habit, you can do it with a Built Bar, and it's healthier. You get the protein that your body's looking for. If you're working out, you want to throw one in your gym bag, that's great. If you're busy, you want to throw one in your work bag. That'll help you get through the day. You can even use it as a meal replacement. It still gets those nutrients into your body if you want to get through and be a little bit healthier. Go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15. It's going to work every single time for 15% off at Built.com. So you don't have to stock up right away. Figure out what you like, and then you can stock up later. Every time you go to Built.com, use that promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off.
I know betting is not legal, I think, in this state or where we were to start this series. But if I were a betting man, I would think I would bet on Jayson Tatum having a bounce back game. It just feels like, for one, it feels like he needs to, I think, for his psyche, for one. Yeah. But I do wonder how much the wrist is playing a factor right now. And not so much. And look, I just want to say this because I had a bunch of people in my mentions trying to say that Jayson was making excuses. Let me just I just asked the guy a question.
Yeah.
And he gave me an answer. There wasn't an excuse. He was answering a question. You followed it up, and he just kind of says, and then tries to completely downplay it by just saying, it's healed, don't worry about it. That's not a guy making an excuse.
No.
He's just saying, hey, you see why my hand is wrapped right now? It's because of this, but don't worry about it. It's fine. In that game, when he fell on it, he was grabbing at it pretty hard.
Yeah.
And obviously we saw the wrap after game 2, which, I mean, he was able to make jokes about it after game 2. When it was just too tight or whatever it was. But I think to me, I wonder if it was bothering him, and I know it's his offhand, but was it affecting maybe his, I don't want to go in and get hit again on it because it's hurting. That's one thing he did say was it was bothering him, but I expect him to bounce back. I think one of the things that, we saw in game 2 was they realized, hey, we missed so many of these middies. We didn't even take it. And the first thing Jaylen does in the first 4 minutes was what? I think he had 3 middies in the first 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Game 2.
Game 2.
I would expect Jayson to come out in game 4 and have a similar type of, okay, let's get you on track early and see if we can get some easy things for you early to get you going to where you're not 4 of 19 in the fourth quarter and passing up layups because you're overthinking things. But if you can get you 3-4 shots, easy looks early, they're not going to, obviously the Bucks aren't going to just give them to you. If you can generate some easy look early, the way you did for Jaylen in game 2 early, I think it'll go a long way in getting him to get back on the right track.
Yeah, I mean, I did see some of those when look, it's pretty simple. When they're in drop coverage, those spots are going to be there. And Ime has harped on it. I don't think either team has played a complete game yet this series. Boston definitely has not.
No.
They haven't put it all together yet. And again, a testament to each defense. They're not going to let you put a whole game together where Tatum's going and Jaylen's going and you get Robert Williams going and Horford's doing his. Like, it's hard for something's going to have to give in one of these games. Each defense is too good. So I'm with you. I expect him to take some of those shots. The ones that he can step into quick 1-2 in rhythm, guys playing off you far enough where you feel comfortable. That's a warm-up shot. Take those.
Yeah.
I think some of the rules of earlier in the season where you're like, okay, work some of that around, or that's not the most efficient. No, whatever open shot you can get against this defense.
The playoffs. It's about one thing, and that's buckets.
Yeah.
Which is why I think so many guys, you realize how important the mid-range is in the playoffs. We could talk about the mid-range being a lost art, and you could talk about analytics, and you do all you want. Guys need middies in the playoffs. And, that is what got Boston going in game 2 because Jaylen hits 3, Al hits 1, and all of a sudden you can't drop as much. You have to respect it, and I think that's where they're going to try to put that pressure on that defense early.
I always call the mid-range shot the body blow, and that's where you soften up the defense. And then the next thing that I wanted to talk about with you in one of the things that I saw in that third quarter, especially, the Celtics almost have forgotten how to use Robert Williams.
Yeah.
They keep dropping these passes down by his knees, and you're like, what are you doing? They're putting him in positions where
just go up.
Yeah, just right. If you're not going to give him the ball in a place where he can at least catch it, don't even bother passing it to him. I think if you can get that mid-range, pull Lopez up a little bit, just make him step, because there's just a natural inclination. It's hard to stick to your principles, and Bud might say, no, that's fine, give him that shot.
Yeah.
But if they start making 2, 3, 4 of them, you naturally, you're like, I can't let them just keep hitting these. I got to go up there and challenge that. And that's when Rob slips in behind the back. That's when you lob it up to him. I'm waiting. We're talking about the Jayson Tatum game. What I'm really waiting for is the Robert Williams game, where he's all of a sudden you get 2 or 3 lobs or 2, 3 dump offs, and now the entire defense is kind of like in a little bit of disarray. So the Celtics, it all goes hand in hand. Tatum being aggressive, taking those mid-range shots, all of that stuff, protecting the ball, that all leads to the Robert Williams stuff. I'm still waiting for that to happen, but if the Celtics really are going to beat the Bucks and steal home court, they need to figure out how to use Rob. And then Rob, at the same time, needs to also figure out how to stay on the court and not get bullied around by Giannis.
Yeah, and, I think maybe if he were not dealing with a massive headache, things might have been a little bit different down the stretch there as well.
Yeah, that's true.
We did see him. I mean, he was effectively he did not. Clearly, he passed concussion protocol, or else he would not have been allowed back in the game. But I saw him on the bench when he came back from the locker room from taking the elbow. I know what that look is like. That's I have a massive headache look. I don't know if I can look straight look. I may not have a concussion, but it's pretty close.
Right.
So I remember, like, even if it's for Rob, it's hunting tips. And I think in both games 1 and 2, he had some pretty momentum shifting tip dunks in the early portions, I think, of both of those games. And I think he needs to get going. I think with the lineup change that the Bucks made going into last game, going with shifting Grayson Allen and Portis, his importance becomes just a little bit more there. They're trying not to get as much of those 3 big lineups with Giannis, Bobby, and Brook in there. So he's got to get to his spots. And obviously, if the middies are there, it helps because it opens up the lob to him. But he's got to be just a little bit, I think, more aggressive, hunting some of those tips on the offensive boards that are get his team going whenever he's around there.
Yeah, and look, I consider that if you see Rob kind of like off in that opposite block, and if you're Tatum or Brown, and a drive where you draw the defense and you just put a shot up off the rim is almost as good as finding that pass. If you say, I can't get the pass through, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this shot up there. I'm going to put it up there nice and soft. I'm going to float it up there. If it goes in, great. I want it to go in. But if not, Rob is unchecked and he can come in and get that offensive rebound. Understanding where he is for the putbacks is just as important as understanding where he is for the lobs and the dump offs. So I agree with you completely.
Yeah.
He can get in there and he, he did do that early. He's been doing it well early in these games. I think the difference is, can he do it late? And to your point, the elbow to the head might have had an impact on how how aggressive he was. Look, concussion, no concussion. I'm going to assume that he truly does not have a concussion.
I would hope not.
Yeah, I don't expect anybody to mess around with that stuff. But look, as one of my old coaches told me, once you get caught peeping, you don't want to stick your head in there anymore. And that naturally will kind of, I think, make people a little gun shy about mixing it up. So hopefully he can get back in there. All right, well, let's wrap it up with this. You, with your unbiased opinion, what's your sense on game 4?
I think Boston takes it. I think they will match. I like Ime's his ability to counter, to come back the next game. That has kind of impressed me both in this series, and then really in the last last half of the year, where they were just the best team in the NBA for most of that stretch. You can make that argument, and I really want to see what they do. I still think the series goes 7. I don't know who wins. I just think it goes 7.
Yeah.
My pick before the series was Celtics in 7. Although I don't know if I really want to bet against Giannis in a game 7. I don't care where it is.
Right.
Seeing how he has played in closeout games before, I thought Chris Middleton was going to hurt the Bucks a little bit more, but you do see where, you are sometimes leaning a lot on how many threes is Pat Connaughton going to hit, how many threes is Grayson Allen going to hit, how many threes is Bobby Portis going to hit. Then maybe you would like, to Ime's point earlier, as much as I love Drew as a defender, you're probably okay if Drew Holiday is taking 30 shots in a game. And only getting 25 points. If he becomes more efficient, then obviously that becomes a bad problem. But, obviously he had some crucial ones the other day. But I think if you're Boston, I think you live with that, especially if it means that Giannis is not taking shots or if Giannis is not getting to the rim. you feel a little bit better. But the biggest thing I can think is I do think Boston bounced back. I think we go back to Boston 2-2. I think I have to book a trip back to Milwaukee. And I think I got to book another one back to Boston after that.
Oh man, you're gonna get those points though. That's that's the whole thing.
No, always about the points. Always about the points
though. Yeah, man. I think. Look, to me, it's that transition number that you gave is the ultimate key here, and like I don't even care that Giannis had 40. The 8 assists are what bothered me the most about Giannis's performance. He had 20 at the half and 2 assists. Boston was up 4. And that to me was telling, because I keep saying, I've said it wherever I can talk about what they do with Giannis. 40 points and 4 assists from Giannis is okay. As long as he's not like 3-point, but like keeping it minimized if he's generating less than 50 points on his points and assists, then the rest of that team is not going to score the 50 points. But if he's generating 60 something, then the rest of the team can put up 35 and get you to the 100. And that's where you start to have problems, because this really is whoever can get to 100 first in this series. Because if you score 100, it's an accomplishment in this. I'm always surprised when teams can do that in this series. So, and that's from limit your turnovers, because Giannis in transition is where he's really getting his assists. Limit the turnovers, limit his assists, and if he bowls through people and he gets a bunch of free throws and scores 40 again, not a problem for me, not a problem. But if he's setting other people up on top of that, then you're screwed.
In game 1, I can't look this number up real quick, but I believe the Bucks shot 12 of 18 off of his passes. He had 18 assist opportunities. They hit 12 of them, obviously, and that he had the triple double. I mean, if they're shooting 66% off of his passes, it's going to be a long night for Boston.
Right. And 7 of those were 3-pointers in game 1.
Yes. So, I mean, that's a lot of points that he's generating right there. That's the 7 threes. That's 21.
Yep. And then
the 31. So that's 55. That hits your number right there.
Yeah.
That hits you're over 50. So they shot really well off of his passes in game 1, did not as much in game 2. But you're right. I think if he's generating that much, that's when you got to start to be worried a little bit.
All right. Well, we'll see how game 4 goes. Andrew, really appreciate you coming on. Thank you, Andrew Lopez. Follow him on Twitter. You got the double underscore going on. When
I joined Twitter, this was back in our advanced publication days, where it had to be a Lopez and Nola for NOLA.com, and then right 2 years into it, they're like, "Hey, don't use Nola in your name anymore." This is like 2014-15 Twitter, and you're like, guys, I don't know if you know, there's quite a few Andrew Lopez's.
There's a few.
And I definitely got behind the chains in the Twitter name game. So found something I liked, and I stuck with it. @_Andrew_Lopez. Hey, I have to use the underscore because there's a John Karalis. There are more John Karalises than you might imagine out there. So there's a dude out there with the @John Karalis without the underscore that I don't think he's ever tweeted, but he still holds that account, and I'm forever pretty sure @Andrew Lopez hasn't tweeted since 2008.
What's that about?
I'm gonna look that up right now.
Do they know who we are? Come on.
Clearly they don't. He is locked. That's what he is. Oh, he follows me.
Oh, how about that?
I didn't know that. Apparently he is a creator and executive producer for Bravo. Huh. But he does follow me. Maybe I will follow him now and get all of these things changed.
Look at this. Look at this. That's hilarious. And now this is the beginning of a chapter, the first chapter of a story that's about to be written. This could be something great. All launched on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
I just followed him. Let's see where this goes, baby.
Oh, that's amazing. Andrew, really do appreciate it. And thanks everybody for listening, subscribing wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, if you are a subscriber, please share the podcast. Tell everybody they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.